Today on Indie Comic Spotlight, we are talking about an amazing accomplishment by a group of indie creators, Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. Now, I am not overselling it when I call it that because this was a huge undertaking to put together this 200-page plus book. I mean, we're talking this is the Avengers Endgame of indie comics here. The mastermind behind this madness is creator Travis Gibb, who you may remember we talked about recently with his Voodoo Nations book that was mentioned in the Tales from the Collective Initiative #1. I know I'm going to probably repeat this so many times during this video, but there's so many creators here. I'm going to try my best to give everybody a spotlight, but I wanted to mention a couple that I have a connection to here are Wendy Gale and her husband Chuck Pino, which, as you know by now, and even Lord Cthulhu agrees with me,
Chuck Pino is the sexiest editor in indie comics.
Okay, Chuck, last time I do that joke, I promise. Maybe. The first thing to know about this book is it's actually a sequel to Cthulhu Invades Oz. Unfortunately, I have not gotten a chance to read that one. There's a great little foreword in the book by Raven Gregory, and if you don't know who that is, he's actually from Zenescope Comics, and he did the Wonderland trilogy over there. So it was highly appropriate to have him be the one to do the foreword. The book is sectioned off by these great little poems by David Greshel. They just separate each of the acts and take us forward in the story and set up the mood and tone before we get on to the next one. I've debated the best way to do this, and in order to give everybody at least a little time to shine, I'm going to go over every story, but I'm just going to give a quick blurb about them so that way this video doesn't get too long. First up is the story called Your Kill, Your Karma, written by Chuck Pino with pencils by Chris Madd. The first story focuses on the caterpillar and how he finds an ingenious way to deal with Cthulhu's minions when they come looking for him. The next story is called The Stars Are Right, written by Michael Tremarche and art by Elias Gambit Melendez. I can't really show too much of this story because I'm not going to do spoilers in this review, but let's just say that a popular Wonderland character meets their untimely fate in order for the cultists to get into Wonderland. Then we have Down the Cthulhu Hole, written by Russell Nahalty with art by Claire Donahue. Here it's established that this story takes place after Alice has previously been in Wonderland, and now she's returned to try to find out what is going on. Next we have I, Hatter, written by Colleen Douglas with art by Jesus Gan. This might be a very mild spoiler, but I'm pretty sure it's mentioned somewhere out there, but basically this is where the Hatter decides to side with Cthulhu, and this establishes the two sides in the upcoming war. People who join with the Hatter and people who join with Alice. The Father of Serpents, written by Joseph Dewey's with art by MJ Massey. This story follows Bill the Lizard as he tries to go about a seemingly normal day, all the while he's being tempted by the forces of Cthulhu, and it has a very Twilight Zone twist ending. Turtle Soup, written by John Crowther with art by Don Wynn. This is a fun exchange between the Mock Turtle and Cthulhu himself, as we learn that Cthulhu does not completely understand the denizens of Wonderland. Spill the Tea, written by Heather Gibb, with art by Martha Schwartz. A very surreal entry here, as Camilla Cups appears to be having a tea party with Cthulhu and his minions, as she tries to gather information from them. Curse of the Egg Yolk, written by Philip Boothorn, with art by Don Cardenas. This follows an older Humpty Dumpty who apparently is a scientist in this world, and they find an interesting way to use his lore in order to fight against Cthulhu's forces. The Frumious Bandersnatch, written by Rob Multari with art by Carlos Herrera. A Bandersnatch encounters a Shoggoth who takes on its form, and then they have an awesome knockdown drag-out battle with some great art. You Just Can't Find Good Help Anymore, written by Nathan Chio with art by C.R. Florence. The Duchess and her husband reluctantly go to war, with yet another great twist at the end. Jam Today, written by L.K. Ingino, with art by Abby Butler. And I know it's shameful to say, but my knowledge of Alice in Wonderland pretty much stops at the Disney movie and one random TV special from the 80s. So I recognize that this looks like the chess pieces, and obviously one of Cthulhu's minions has taken the form of a knight. So great little art here as well, and yet another interesting ending. Sacrifice, Rise of the Poison Pawn variation, written by Davey Lee, with art by Luis Santamarina. This sets up where the Red Queen is during all this, and there'll be more to this story as we go forward. Where There's Tea, There's Hope, written by Kurt Belcher, art by Robbie Bragdon. This is basically Alice's attempt to stop the Mad Hatter from supporting Cthulhu. An Uncivil War, Part 1 and 2, both written by David Galliano, with art on Part 1 by Jesiel de Jesus, and art on Part 2 by Joshua Menendez. This essentially shows how Tweedledee and Tweedledum each chose a different side during the war. This next one is interesting. It's written by Nick Cohn, with art by Kurt Belcher, and I want to say it appears maybe 4 times throughout the whole thing, and what I gathered is it's the same situation from the different points of view, basically the followers versus the flowers of the garden. Next we have Set Your Teeth on Edge, written by and art by Jamie Primack. This is a fascinating discussion between the Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter about madness and what the difference is between the madness that was already in Wonderland versus the madness that Cthulhu has brought. Patty and Maddie, or This is a Different Kind of Rabbit Hole. Story and art by Richard Kemp. This story has a classic war movie feel where you have 2 individuals who are obviously on opposite sides, but once upon a time they were not. Reality of a Dream, written by Jay Hewer, with art by Emily Ricett. Another surreal one where it's actually the Dormouse who gets to have an interaction with Cthulhu this time. Tarts, written by Matt Knowles and Steph Cannon, with art by James Sims. The Knave of Hearts has had it with the Queen of Hearts, and he's ready to switch sides. The Last of Its Kind, story by Daniel Kalban, with art by D. Horn. Another one with great art, but a pretty gruesome ending, and we get to see one of Wonderland's most infamous creatures. The Temple of Retribution, written by Stoney Williams, with art by Ben Huminiuk. I absolutely love this one because if you know the story of the Walrus and the Carpenter, you will find the end to this ironically twisted. Blessings, written by Christopher Jerome, with art by Patrick Boermeyer. A card soldier has a very unsettling tea party with the March Hare. The Awakened King, written by Travis Gibb, with art by Stan Yak. The Yellow King and the Red King of Wonderland have a showdown that's very anime-like, and I loved it because the art was just amazing, and I love this idea as well. I Have My Sacrifices, written by Kira Burton, with art by James Burton. A lone warrior of Wonderland goes up against one of Cthulhu's minions kaiju battle style, thanks to those glorious Wonderland mushrooms. And speaking of kaiju battles, we have The Epitome of Madness, written by Kurt Belcher, with art by Etienne de Rapengini. But this being Wonderland, of course, this fight doesn't end exactly the way you think it would. Fog of War, written by Matthew Kund, with art by Ertan Sion. This is a continuation of the Red Queen story, and we get to see just how hardcore she can get. Diamonds, written by David Byrne, with art by Iranga Devasurendra. This is a pretty short one that references the Red Queen story that preceded it and has a pretty funny payoff. The Card You're Dealt, written by Sam Boother with art by Luke Stone. One of the Queen of Hearts soldiers needs to get a message out, and he asks a griffin for help. But as you have learned so far in this book, things don't always turn out the way you think. Deck of Delirium, written by Wendy Gale with art by Kieran Silva. Alice appears to be having a rematch of her croquet game with the Red Queen, as the cards around them appear to be giving in to Cthulhu's madness. Deuce and Luck, written by Travis Hill with art by Mark Pate. This is a really good one that follows two card warriors who are on the verge of being overwhelmed by Cthulhu's forces. Henches, written by Peter Ricett with art by Warren Brown. This is another one that has a classic war story feel to it, as we have one of the card warriors writing a letter, meanwhile Cthulhu's forces are closing in. A Golden Feast, written by Chuck Pino with art by Jake Baggs. Alice meets Cthulhu's mirror version of her, which is named Malice. And let's just say my friend Chuck knows how to play with your emotions by the end of this story. After the Wonder, written by Sebastian Piccione with art by Carl Molin. Cthulhu and the Cheshire Cat have an interesting conversation about the whole ordeal as we start to wrap things up. When Deities Fail and Goddesses Fall, written by Brian Hawkins with art by Ignacio Anibal Di Melio. It was a little unclear to me who this person that Cthulhu was talking to here towards the end, but it might have been something I missed in the Oz book. So anyway, it does end with another surprise character coming out, which I had to edit out there in the last panel. And on top of all that, they already have the next book planned out here, Cthulhu Invades Neverland. So I'm going to put a link to Orange Cones Productions website below, so you can follow them and check it out and see if you can grab yourself a copy of Cthulhu Invades Wonderland as well. Thanks everyone for hanging in there on this longer than usual video. And please subscribe and like the video, and be sure to follow us as we continue to work on our own comic, Malia Mayhem #1. Until then, we'll see you next time.